Okay, welcome back to another episode of Room 1-on-1 with the Homeboys. After a successful opening day win over Ross County, Celtic are on the road again, and it's up the road to the Granite City as Aberdeen host us on Sunday afternoon for a 12 p.m. kick-off. To help me get the lowdown on our opponents, I am delighted to welcome back host of the Aberdeen Podcast, the ABZ Podcast, Gary Scott, back to the show. Well, Gary, how you doing, pal?
I'm good, Scott. Not bad at all. You?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. I'm good. Thanks again for coming on. Really appreciated.
No, thanks for having us.
Right, as with tradition, and especially since first time we've done it right at the start of last season, is going to be the same pattern. We'll look back at last season and you can give me your thoughts and your fucking hopes and however you were feeling. So I'll just batter through this. Anytime you want to jump in, you know the script. All right, mate?
Aye, all good.
Right, so Jim Goodwin, who had replaced Stephen Glass the previous February, had a very eventful summer, spending some serious dough, relatively speaking, and bringing in a very good standard of player. Utilising the millions incoming from the Calvin Ramsey and the Lewis Ferguson deals, and ended up spending over $1 million in incomings over the summer. So it's all started to be a League Cup, drawn in a group with Peterhead, Dumbarton, Stirling Albion, Raith Rovers. 4 wins before saw he's top the group, and then you did an away tie with Annan Athletic as a reward. 4-1 win after extra time was followed up by another 4-1 win over Partick Thistle in October, and that set up the semi-final tie with Rangers at Hampden. Now, despite having the first half lead, the Dons would go down 2-1 in extra time and depart the tournament. How'd that one sit with you?
It's one of those. I mean, we came into that game, that semi-final against Rangers, not in great form.
Mm-hmm.
And there was already loads of questions now starting to be asked about Jim Goodwin at that point going into that game. And our performance first half was excellent. We were really, really good that afternoon. Got a goal in front, looked decent, conceded a soft goal early in the second half, then managed to kind of ride out a little bit of a storm, created a couple of chances again. And then our captain at the time, Anthony Stewart, just lost his head completely, and I don't know what he's thinking. And it's one of those, like, you know, as the most biased Aberdeen fan you can find on the planet, from the East Stand at Hampden, you know, so it happened at the opposite end of the stadium. You might as well be watching on the moon. You know how it is at Hampden.
Mm-hmm.
Even I had to say it's probably a red card. Like, I can't even even I can't.
You know it's bad. You know it's bad if that's.
Yeah, like even I can't realistically try and pretend otherwise. And it was just madness. I mean, there was like a minute to go, I think, in normal time.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, just see it out. And he didn't need to do it. He was going, I think it was Sakala, I think he binned. Like, he was going nowhere. And it's just like, what are you doing? Like, seriously. And then, yeah, we know what happens then. We're going to extra time. Rangers score then. First 5 minutes of extra time, and they kind of coasted it there. We rallied a bit towards the back end. It's disappointing. It's always disappointing if you get to a cup semi-final and then you lose it, especially against them. But the performance on the whole was pretty good, I thought, and so I thought that maybe was going to be a bit of a turning point for Goodwin again, coming back after the World Cup break. But it wasn't to be.
Listen, I remember that. See, the thing is, you're talking about your big boy Stewart. Like, so obviously he's come in the summer, he's been made captain out of nowhere. We'll talk about Anthony Stewart, and he came in the summer, he was made captain, it was like a strange one, it was like, here he is, and it wasn't great right for you off. But see that game you're talking about, that semi-final, I remember him having a good game.
He played okay,
just out of nowhere, this nonsense challenge, man.
He'd played okay because he'd like made a rick for himself ahead of the game, because I don't know if you remember, but going into the game he got asked by a journalist to think about who he'd rather play, whether it was Čolak or Morelos, and I can't even remember now which one he picked. I think he picked Morelos, and he was like, "Oh, Čolak's a much better player than he is," and you know when you're like, "Why are you doing that, mate? Why are you doing that? Just say what any other professional footballer would say in this situation. Just say, oh, they're both difficult opponents, and whoever it is will be a challenge, and you know." Now, thankfully, he actually did quite well. Like, I'm sure he started with Morelos that day, Beale.
Mm-hmm.
He did okay, but it was just madness. And it was just like, just ridiculous. You could almost understand it from a really inexperienced young player doing it.
Exactly.
But Stuart's, I can't remember how old Stuart is now, but he's not a kid. He's
Nah.
been around the block in the lower leagues of England for a long, long time, and I just don't know what he was thinking. Just madness.
Right, so league-wise, very inconsistent start. Only putting a 2-match winning run one time before the World Cup in November. So during that spell, you had some big wins: 5-0 win over Livy, 4-1 win over Hibs, and a 4-1 win over St Mirren. But that's offset with 4-1 reverses by Rangers and a very sore 4-0 defeat by eventual bottom side Dundee United. So as the league took the pause for the World Cup, Aberdeen sat in third place, 8 points behind Rangers, 15 games played, 8 wins, 1 draw, 6 defeats. Goal difference of +6, 25 points on the board, 2 ahead of Livingston. So all in all, Wales, not what you can, because I remember speaking to you and you were very hopeful by the guys you were bringing in. It's still you're comfortably sitting in third, just, know what I mean? So at that point, everything seems all right.
Even then,
right?
Even then, there were still loads of niggling doubts about Goodwin at that point. That 4-0 defeat at Tannadice was an absolute shocker. I mean, United had only scored 1 goal at home, I think, when we played them. They'd obviously come off the back of being smashed for 9 by you guys. Jack Ross had already gone at that point. We went down there on the back of, I can't remember who we beat now off the top of my head, but we went down there in decent form, and you thought, here we go, good opportunity to really, stiff United, and that performance was just a shocker. And I think that was the start. That there was the start of the end for Goodwin. You can trace it as far back as that.
Well, the World Cup came and it went, and it all collapsed for Goodwin. 8 league games, 6 defeats, a draw, and a solitary home win over St Johnstone. And a very famous cup game in between, and it was done for Jim Goodwin at Aberdeen. Barry Robson would take the hot seat again and would oversee a very good run, which ultimately secured his promotion to the gig full time. For the remainder of the season, 15 games, Robson would oversee 9 wins, and included in that was a 7-match winning run. So at the end of the season, Aberdeen finished in third place. 38 games played, 18 wins, 3 draws, 17 losses, 56 goals scored and 60 conceded. So a goal difference of -4, 57 points on board, 35 points behind Rangers and 3 points in front of Hearts. Thus qualifying for the Europa League playoff place and ultimately European group football secured for this season. Scottish Cup, I'll no labour on it, mate. Not labour on it. One game, 1 loss, away defeat to Darvel, and potentially the worst ever result in the club's history. But that's so. From the outside, a lot happened in a season that, again, when I spoke to you and looking at the form of some players, it was a season full of potential that looked dangerously close to going totally wrong, but was maybe rescued, and potentially due to the weakness of the league, it's ended up your expected place in the league and in Europe.
Yeah, I mean, so when Goodwin finally gets dunted, every Aberdeen fan out there would have been really concerned about being dragged into a relegation scrap at that point. I mean, our trajectory was going one way, and that was not upwards. And at that point, the league was starting to really kind of concertina at the bottom as well, and there were teams starting to pick up points. And at that moment, I couldn't see what Aberdeen were going to win a game for the rest of the season.
That bad.
We went that run from the World Cup break through to Goodwin leaving. We only won 1 game in that period of time, which was against St Johnstone. We had a 0-0 draw with Ross County, and then that final 3 games we were away at Hearts and got smashed for 5, and Hearts didn't even play well. Like, Hearts didn't have to get out of second gear, and they beat us 5-0. Darvel, we can all kind of laugh about Darvel now, and we don't know if we can laugh about it, but the way the season went out, it's one of these. The aftermath of Darvel was unbelievable.
Did you go to that game incidentally?
I wasn't at Darvel, thankfully.
That's small mercies.
That's it. But yeah, I mean, what can you say about that? Honestly, just there are no words to describe getting beat by Darvel, 6th tier. I think Darvel are still these days. And then for the fact that the board allowed Goodwin to remain in charge for the Hibs game the following Saturday was just unbelievable. And then we get beat for 6 at Easter Road, and it's just like, at that point I was really fearing the worst. Barry came in, and Barry's first game in charge was a 3-2 defeat at home to St Mirren. We had to play that game with 10 men for about 85 minutes because Ross McCrory got sent off for, I still don't understand why he got sent off, but it happened. And at that point you're thinking, we're fucked. Like, we are properly fucked. We brought in 2 defenders on the last day of the transfer window, who, on the face of it, you were not sure about. There was Angus MacDonald, who'd just been released by Swindon Town in League 2. And then we brought in Matty Pollock on loan from Watford. And Matty's history didn't jump out at you and go, oh, he's going to come in and really sort us out. We also had Liam Scales, and Liam was going through a really rough period as well around that time. The whole squad, you could just see, was just short of confidence. And the turnaround that Barry Robson instigated is nothing short of phenomenal. I mean,
wild.
There's clearly an element about Hearts completely Hibsing it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
which is brilliant. But at the same time, if you go on a run, the run we went on, and the teams around you are faltering, then you deserve to finish where you end up finishing. It's quite possibly the most wild season I've ever seen from an Aberdeen perspective.
I mean, you think about it, you made the change the season previous with Stephen Glass gone, and you bring in Goodwin, and Goodwin makes these changes straight away. Guys are punted out. Scott Brown sent on his way. Considine's tell he's done and stuff like that. But you still don't get that anywhere near this reaction. No. You kind of still plod along. You're still, I mean, on your day, very good. On your day, on the bad day, fucking terrible. So, I mean, I've got to admit, I couldn't. Do you know that way I lived through it? And I remember watching that Hibs game, and like you said, I watched the Darvel game. I laughed at the Darvel game until it went to the end, and you're kind of going, this is fucking terrible. And then I watched the Hibs game because the players were supposedly all behind them, and fuck, it was woeful. It was like woeful.
Yeah.
And for him to come in and get such a reaction, as you say, I think it is absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, it goes to show 2 things, I think. One, there were a lot of Aberdeen fans, myself included, who were not convinced by the appointment of Goodwin when it happened anyway. It didn't, the 3 of us on our pod, we talk about it all the time. It's like there was nothing on Jim Goodwin's record that indicated that he was good enough or ready to be the manager of Aberdeen Football Club. Yeah. There was nothing in his track record that indicated that. He'd gone through, I think he got lucky because he had a real purple patch as St Mirren manager just as we were going through our rough patch with Stephen Glass. And at the time, St Mirren were maybe the form team in the league. But any sort of like cursory look at Goodwin's track record at St Mirren, and even at Alloa, would show you that he was a really streaky manager. Like, he'd suddenly go on runs of like 5 or 6 games undefeated at St Mirren, but he'd then easily go on a 6 or 7 game losing streak. Yeah. And he'd just come off the back of a winning run with St Mirren after they'd come back from the winter break at that point. And it honestly felt like our board just went, shit, like, he'll do. Like, we'll go safe compared to Stephen Glass, which was deemed to be a big experiment.
That's right, yeah.
And I think, like, they ended up with a situation where they were down to Jack Ross or Jim Goodwin. And I remember tweeting out about it at the time. I was like, it's like being asked whether you want, like, shot in the head or shot in the heart. Like, neither of these are like options that makes me as an Aberdeen fan enthused. Goodwin comes in, he talks a good game, don't get me wrong. Dundee United fans have not yet twigged the fact he talks a good game but often doesn't deliver on it. And yeah, it was a disaster. The man management part, a big issue. I can see why the Scott Brown thing fell apart. I think Brown has said himself, obviously he came to Aberdeen with a view of being, on the coaching team and getting an opportunity to learn his trade, and Goodwin was very adamant that it was going to be Goodwin and his assistant Lee Sharp, and that was it, and there wasn't going to be space for Brown on the coaching team. I think as well with Goodwin's got a bit of an ego about him. I think he wanted to be seen to be the man in the dressing room, and I don't think he would have appreciated maybe a personality like Brown there as well. Then you saw the same thing with Considine. The issues happened with Christian Ramirez, although I don't think Ramirez helped himself with some of his behaviour either around the same time. And you're right, you saw none of that bounce when Jim Goodwin came in. I think we actually finished the season in a lower league position than we were in when Goodwin came in.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
So we never saw it. He got the close season. He benefited massively from the fact we had a head of recruitment in the door now, which Stephen Glass hadn't had. And our signings we made last summer were probably on the whole a success. Like there's some misses in there, but we had some big hits in like Jovski, in Duke, in Ramadani, and in Leighton Clarkson. So yeah, I mean, Goodwin should never have been in the job in the first place, is the way I look at it. And it lasted way too long. Whether that meant that we had the right solution under our noses the entire time in the form of Barry Robson still remains to be seen, because obviously Robson took charge for one game when Glass left before Goodwin came in. So a 1-1 draw at home against St Johnstone. Maybe the right answer for us all along was Barry Robson, who was sitting obviously coaching our under-18s at the time. Time will tell on that one as well. I mean, Barry deserves his opportunity now to be the full-time manager because of what he did at the end of last season. You couldn't. He backed the club, the board, into a corner because they couldn't possibly give that job to anybody else. We interviewed 4 people, including Barry. And I think at the time the interviews happened, is I think that they fell off the back of the weekend that we beat Hearts 3-0 at Pittodrie. And so when Robson suddenly turned that around, I think that put us like 4 games unbeaten on the spin, or 4 games in a row that we'd won. I think anyone that comes in and even if they smash the interview, there's always going to be that thing in the back of everybody's head on the board going, aye, but the boy who's currently got the job is like smashing it. And if we upset that by bringing somebody else in, we maybe don't finish third. And then you've got the issue whereby the fans are always going, why have you brought this guy in now? What if this guy takes time to come in and settle? And this is a disaster, and this boy had us winning. And I can see why it ended up happening. And so, listen, Barry deserves it. We need to see how he goes now. It's going to be interesting to see how he goes with his first full season in charge and having to deal with the recruitment and everything that he's had to deal with over the summer and still needs to deal with them over the summer.
Do you know any of the people who were in for the job at the same time?
So the story will be, and whether this is completely 100% confirmed by anyone, I'm not sure, but I believe it was Marti Cifuente, who's the Hammarby manager. Right. There was a guy called Ricardo Rodriguez, who's a Spanish manager who is currently, or was previously, had experience in the Japanese J League. Right, okay. So kind of possibly looking at the kind of Postecoglou model there for Aberdeen. And then there was a couple of Scandinavian names who were rumoured as well at that moment in time.
Big risks. The guys, exactly like you're saying. I mean, nobody's a guarantee, but bringing in guys who've never fucking looked at Scottish football in their life, do you know what I mean? It seems a bit...
Possibly, but then, you have to look at the way that, you have to look at the success that Postecoglou brought to Celtic. Yeah. Same idea, and to be honest, there was a little bit of me that was in the mould of, I don't want to see somebody come off the merry-go-round, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
I'm sick and tired of that. And possibly bringing in a manager from further afield, you get different ideas, and you get different ideas about how to play the game. The challenge there is always going to be around, can they implement their style in the Scottish game, where, we saw it with Stephen Glass to an extent. Stephen had good ideas, I think, about the way that he wanted to play football. I don't think it's any coincidence that our best performances under Stephen Glass probably came against Rangers and Celtic. Mm-hmm. In the sense that it was against teams who were expecting to dominate possession and therefore possibly gave up a little bit more space in the park and weren't just sitting in against you and weren't sitting in to be compact against you. So there were spaces, and there were times against both Rangers and Celtic that we looked decent under Stephen Glass, I thought. But then when it came to playing, St Johnstone at home, and they just come up and play a bank of 4, a bank of 5, and they've got one guy up top, we just didn't have the guile to really break them down. It was a lot of very passive side to side passing without doing anything. Mm-hmm. And it's that thing. It's about, can you find a manager who's able to kind of deal with that? And maybe sometimes the best answer is, if you don't have millions to spend on players, who then have the technical ability to be able to do the things that you need to do to unlock those defenses, then sometimes you just have to be able to roll your sleeves up a little bit and have a plan B and kind of play the Scottish way. So, yeah, I can see why the board decided to go down the Robson route.
There is an eternal frustration with that, isn't there? That you can't get that free-flowing football because you've really got to cut the cloth with your means and what you're playing against and what you're... Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but, I mean, like, Celtic and Rangers will see it all the time in that you'll see teams turn up at Parkhead or at Ibrox and they'll play just to try and get away with a 0-0 draw and hope for the absolute best. The vast majority of teams in the Premier League do that at Pittodrie as well, you know. But the difference is we don't have the level and quality of player that you guys have to break down that type of defense, and that's the big challenge I think where we're at. We're just in that weird middle ground because teams treat us in a very similar way, but we just don't have the player pool to kind of deal with that.
Aye. We'll touch on the transfer stuff now. So we'll look at this pre-season that came in, right? So not a massive overturn in the squad in terms of incomings so far. Touching on your own assertion that last season's incomings were pretty good, but quite a few outgoings as the squad's getting trimmed to suit, right? So outgoing first, we've got Ross McCrory, departed the club for EFL Championship side Bristol City for an undisclosed fee, but suggestions deal it was worth around $2 million. Forwards, Marley Watkins, Cora McClellan departed in free transfers to Kilmarnock Salford City. Defender Mason Hancock joined Airdrie, also on a free. Callum Roberts signed for Scunthorpe for an undisclosed fee. 17-year-old Timi Fatona was released by the club. Irish winger Matty Kennedy rejoined Killie on a free, whilst Dan Campbell, Biling Olayemi, Aaron Smith all left in free to join Barrow and Peterhead respectively. Lewis Pirrie was signed by new Championship side Leeds United for a fee of $200,000. The 16-year-old hadn't even made his debut for the Dons. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, no, that's right. He hadn't played first team yet.
17-year-old defender Milos Oksmanski left the club to sign with Cove Rangers. And finally, the two biggies for me, Joe Lewis, former captain and undisputed number one, departed the club at the end of his contract. Lewis had played 271 games in his 7-year spell at the club after signing for Cardiff in 2016. And just this week, Yiba Ramadani, the Albanian international midfielder who was picked up from Hungarian side MTK Budapest last summer for $100,000, was sold to Italian Serie A side for the fee, Lecce, for the fee said to be $1.1 million. Ramadani turned out 44 times last season, scoring 1 and 3 assists. Now, loans, Aaron Reid, Finlay Murray, Evan Towler, Liam Harvey, Blair McKenzie and Adam Emsley all left for loans with Peterhead, Turf United, Montrose, Elgin City, Formartine United, and finally, English right-back Jayden Richardson, who also signed last summer, played 24 times, departed for a loan with Stockport County. Now, before we get to the ends, anybody, I mean, Ramadani's, it's a big blow, but this is what we this whole league has to do, pick them up and get them out.
It's the model. I mean, that's what Aberdeen are trying to do now as well, is to kind of emulate to a certain extent on a slightly smaller scale what Celtic have been doing for years. Dave Cormack's been pretty open about that's where we as a club are going to get to. We can't, for us to maintain the wage bill that we have in place at the moment, we can't just rely on, season ticket sales and, prize money. We need to be selling at least one player every year for 2 or 3 million. Otherwise, the chairman and the other investors have to stump up that cash themselves to kind of keep things even. So that's where we're at the moment. The two big ones there, I think you've mentioned, are probably Ross McCrory, and Ilber. I mean, the Ilber Ramadani deals, on one hand, ridiculous. I mean, we've generated 10 times the return on him in the space of a season. That's not to be sniffed at. I think as well there's some extenuating circumstances with regards to Ramadani. I think, personally speaking, my view is the fee's too low. I think we could have got a little bit more for him. He still had 2 years left in his deal, although that does also make this the optimum window in which to sell him. but there's some extenuating circumstances there, as you touched on. He's an Albanian international. Obviously we were able to get his work permit and visa all sorted out, but I think it was causing some real challenges for some of his close family to travel to Scotland, in particular with the Brexit rules and stuff. So Lecce is a prime candidate for him. It's, there's 3 daily ferries, I think, a day from Lecce back to Albania.
Sorry to interrupt you there, Gary, but it's just a thing us football fans never take into consideration. Just as you said there, his family's struggling to get in this country. That's wild when you actually say that out, isn't it? I mean, you'd be like...
Yeah. I mean, like, visa, if you come from Albania to just visit the UK as a tourist, you have to have a tourist visa now. And because there's all the chat, down south about Albanian immigrants and all this type of stuff, it's one of the red list countries. So it's very, very difficult to get a visa to come in. So, for me, I think 1.2 million euros is light for Ramadani. But I think the club have probably done right by him by saying, you know what, we're not going to hold you to ransom. You need to get away for your own family's sake. It's much closer to home for him. And plus, this is a guy who we picked him up from MTK Budapest, who got relegated from the Hungarian top flight last season. He's got a chance to go and play in Serie A now against some of the biggest teams in the planet. I mean, you can't. He's 27. This chance is never going to come back around for Ramadani again. So you can't begrudge him it. I think the club have done exceptionally well to do it. I mean, we also picked up Ramadani not by accident, but quite close to it, because we did an interesting podcast with one of our recruitment analysts about 6 months ago now, and we were trailing Bojan Miovski, who we signed from MTK Budapest as well, and he was the guy we had eyes on. And our scout was going over to go and watch him, having the data had flagged him up as being a potential. And our chief recruitment analyst at the time had just then gone through the 2 teams that were going to be playing in the game that the scout was going to go and watch, and had just said, oh, by the way, the numbers on this number 6 look quite good for MTK. Just have a look at him, see what you think. And the boy came back glowing more about Ramadani than about Miovski. Then they went and watched them a few more times and was like, we'll take them both. And let's say you picked up Ramadani for 100 grand, and he's done a brilliant job for us. He's got limitations, Ramadani. He was lots of endeavour, really good work ethic, bought into the club, was passionate about the club, which is great to see when you guys see this as well, when you bring in boys from all corners of the globe and they just buy into the club and they get passionate about it. It goes such a long way. Maybe a little, well, not say maybe, definitely could do better on the ball. He gave away too many slack passes for certainly some of the liking of a lot of Aberdeen fans. But hey, listen, it's an unbelievable bit of business there to turn that, like I say, to turn 100 grand into $1 million in the space of seasons, not to be sniffed at.
Aye. Good. So, Nicky Devlin, who's recently been on the cusp of the Scotland side, was picked up on a free from Livingston at the end of his contract. The 29-year-old is Barry Robson's first signing. Leighton Clarkson, who impressed on loan last season, was picked up permanently for an undisclosed fee for Liverpool. Esther Solkla, a 24-year-old Slovenian under-21 striker, was picked up from Radmilj in his homeland for around 300 grand. Another loanee from last season, Graham Shinney, rejoined the club full-time from Wigan, whilst former Celtic goalkeeper Ross Doohan came back to Scotland after a short spell with Tranmere and Forest Green for another undisclosed fee. Finally, Slobodan Rubizic, a 23-year-old Slovakian centre-back, was signed from Slovak side Novi Pazar for a fee of around 200 grand. Loans in, another 2 defenders. Rhys Williams was picked up for Liverpool. The 22-year-old 6'5" centre-half has turned out 19 times for Liverpool, as well as loans with Kidderminster Harriers, Swansea and Blackpool. Also, 26-year-old Israeli international right-back Or Dadia is signed from Hapoel Beersheva on a season's loan. Now, do you think that's you done in terms of signing-ins? I presume you've seen most of these guys, obviously the guys who are coming back, and Leighton Clarkson, I'd like you kind of touch on him. I saw that the centre-half, Rubizic, made his debut straight away at the weekend there. So, if you don't think that's you done, what do you think you still need to bring in?
Yeah, I don't think we're done yet.
Right.
So we're gonna sign. We will sign in the next few days. James McGarry, who's a left back. He'll be coming from Central Coast Mariners in
Right.
Australia.
Okay.
That deal. He's a New Zealand international. That deal was done effectively. It's not been announced properly yet by the club, but as far as we understand, it was done about 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
He's just waiting on the birth of his child. His partner's heavily pregnant before he makes the trip over from Australia, so that'll happen shortly. We need. So if you look at our team on Saturday against Livingston, we've had really big injury issues at the back. So Angus MacDonald, who signed on a permanent deal towards the back end of last season, he has missed quite a bit of pre-season. It looks like he's fit now. He was touch and go for the game against Livy on Saturday, but then his partner gave birth on Friday night, so he missed the game on Saturday. So he might, I know. So he might be back on. You'd think these boys would like plan it a wee bit better, eh? He might be back for the game against Celtic on Sunday. Reece Williams, as you say, we signed from Liverpool on loan. He's had a challenge in pre-season with injury, so I don't think it's likely we'll see him for a few weeks yet. Slobodan Rubezic came in, started at the weekend. He's an absolute no-nonsense Serb shithouse who's going to end up probably receiving the world record of bookings, I imagine, in the Scottish Premier League, because you know how the referees are here. We need, like, Johnny Hayes played left wing back on Saturday. Johnny's been a brilliant servant for Aberdeen Football Club, but I just am getting concerned now that we're starting to get to the end, and I'm not sure if it was wise to give him another year's deal. That said, Johnny started last season like this, and then he came onto a right flyer midway through the season, so who knows, maybe just needs a bit of time to get up and running. Nicky Devlin's been signed, I think, predominantly to play as a right back or right wing back to replace Ross McCrory, but he's not been able to play there yet because of the injuries we've had. So I think once we get our defence sorted out, I believe that, like I say, there's James McGarry coming in at left wing back. Once they get the boys back from fitness, that'll help. I still think we're light now in midfield with Ramadani going. We need to replace him somehow, and we need another creative player like a number 10 to help take some of the load off of Leighton Clarkson. We were trailing our Croatian Tonio Teklic for the last 4 months. He played for Verdajan in the Croat top flight, but he had a choice to move either to Aberdeen or to Trabzonspor in Turkey, and he picked the Turks. So there we go. I'm not sure if we've... Well, exactly. I'm not sure if we've... It's one of those, it's like... I hope we haven't had all of our eggs in one basket with him. It's by all accounts of signs that we've really pursued him really hard, and it's just not worked out. There's obviously the continual chat about Liam Scales' future at Celtic, and then I wouldn't mind seeing another striker in the door as well. I don't think we will, because I think we've got Duke Miofsky. There doesn't appear to be any moves happening for either of them. We've brought Esther Sokler in, who'll be back up, and then we've got young Alfie Babbage kicking about as well. So I'd be surprised to see us do another striker. But yeah, I think
is that other boy still there? The boy that went and loaned to Excelsior last season, or was it Sparta or Rotterdam?
It tells you everything that I've completely omitted to talk about Vinny Bajowin. Yeah, Vinny Bajowin's still here. He was on the bench on Saturday, but I just don't think he
was he on the bench?
I just don't think he features in Barry's plans. Part of the problem we've got is, and I was going to touch on it when you talked about our recruitment last summer, Jim Goodwin, our entire recruitment that we went through last summer, it appeared like we just wanted to overload the squad with wingers because we were going to play a 4-2-3-1. So we signed every fucking winger available under the sun. And then we switched to a back three under Barry. And now we don't need wingers anymore because you don't need them. So
I always like Matty Kennedy. I don't know why. I took a soft spot for him, I think, when he played with St Johnstone. And I think, speaking to you last year, I was like, he's a good signing. And obviously, as you say, it's kind of never worked for him.
And Vinny's one of these. Vinny was brought in as a kind of a winger who could play as a number 10. But again, in a 3-5-2, you don't play with a 10. You don't play with wingers. So it's like, you don't need any of these boys. And that's going to be interesting to see how Barry goes. He's been really, really dogmatic about sticking with a back three, even despite the fact that maybe the players who are available to him don't suit that. He's just gone with it anyway. So that's going to be interesting to see what happens there. I think, like I say, we need a midfielder to replace Ramadani. We need a creative midfielder to help take the load off of Leighton Clarkson. And if I was being greedy now, I would still like to see a left-sided centre half if we're going to persist with three at the back.
There you go. You're touching on the Scales thing. I don't know what's going to happen with Scales. I reckon if Aberdeen stumped up, say, 600 grand, you'd probably get him. It's whether Aberdeen are going to pay that for him. But he's actually done bang on this pre-season for us. Now, he's a guy that I've got to admit, when we signed him, see, we've got like a Shamrock Rovers fan who sometimes appears on our podcast, a Dublin guy, obviously, and he would, he's the best player to come out of the island in a million years, and so when you saw him, you were like, he's all right. He's not great. He's all right, and then obviously with you guys, on his good days, smashing, but then he fell into the kind of same confidence thing as the rest of the squad, didn't he? He never kind of came out as a leader, but he's only a young guy as well, you forget. So it's interesting to see what happens with him, especially with Starfelt, certainly on the road out. I don't know. I mean, I think he's better than the Kobayashi who we've got, so I would put him there. And at times I think he's maybe even better than Welsh, but Welsh is... So I don't know what his future's going to hold.
It'll be interesting because, like you say, it appears like he's had quite a good pre-season. Mm-hmm. I think if Postecoglou hadn't left, I think Liam Scales would be an Aberdeen player by now.
Yeah.
I think that the change of manager hasn't helped because Rodgers has obviously wanted to get a look at everybody, and then he's gone on your pre-season tours and he's done pretty well by all accounts. From what I've heard as well is that Celtic are holding out for a fee that is just like ridiculous, and we're just not willing to pay it.
In terms of what over $1 million?
I don't know if it's over $1 million, but it's probably getting up to that sort of level. And I mean, he's got the thing is he's got 2 years left in his deal, so it's in Celtic's interest, obviously. But I think you guys paid, I don't know, like, did you pay $500,000 for him? Was it even as much as that?
I think you paid about 550. Yeah.
So there's a bit of me.
I thought it would be a case of get your money back. Do you know what I mean?
That's kind of what I thought, and I think Aberdeen would probably be willing to pay that to get him. Mm-hmm. But it would appear at this moment in time it's not something Celtic are willing to entertain. I wouldn't be surprised to see Liam Scales end up at Aberdeen on loan on the last day of the transfer window again.
Yeah.
Which I think would be, from an Aberdeen perspective, I'd like to see Liam Scales back because I thought he had a really ropey period, as did the entire squad during the middle part of last season. But the last that run-in, once Barry came in, he was a colossus. He was absolutely brilliant.
And he suits that formation as well.
Suits it brilliantly. I like, I'm one of these guys that I would ideally love to see my two, if you're playing with a four, I'd love to see my two centre halves, one right-footed, one left-footed, because it just gives you that nice balance.
Yeah.
But it's not the end of the world if you're in a 4-4-2 or a 4, well, with a 4 at the back end where you've got two right-footed centre halves. It's not the end of the world. You can get away with it. It's fine. But I think when you play with a back three, I think it's imperative that your 100%. Left-sided has to be left-footed, just because of the angles in which they're playing up the park. Try to do that with a right-footed player. It's just it just doesn't work. Especially,
as you say, if you're playing wing backs. I mean, I'm led to believe that's where he played a lot of his football first. Shamrock Rovers was wing back, but as you say, if you've got a right-footed centre half try to play it down that lane for you, you're a wide guy. It's no weapon.
And he's got a great left foot on him, Scales. We saw it in the early stages of last season as well. So,
and his goal of the season.
Oh, aye, absolutely, it's brilliant. Anything that retires Alan McGregor is brilliant.
I'm with you there, bro.
I mean, right. Yeah, I think that's what will happen. I think we end up seeing him back on loan.
I've got a smell of that as well.
In a weird way, I think that's probably the worst result for Aberdeen if that happens, to be honest with you. I'd rather, if we can't buy him permanently, I'd rather we moved and looked after somebody else. But
because it must, I mean, I don't know if it's myself and yourself spoke about it. I'm very much dead against, if you're going to loan somebody, then you're loaning somebody. You shouldn't get to say, well, they can't play. I mean, I think that's garbage, but that's just me.
I just don't want to see us. I think we spoke about it when we were on last, because when he came to Aberdeen, there was a lot of backlash.
That's right, yeah.
I've always been in the mind. Yeah, I've always been of the mind of it doesn't matter if it's Celtic or whoever. I don't want to see us loan players from any team in our league. You know, I don't want to be developing players for other teams in our league.
Yeah.
Full stop. Whether we get like a level of benefit out of it or not, I just don't see the value in doing it. So yeah, we'll see what happens.
Right, okay, squad-wise, now I'm going to touch on your expertise here, right? So we've got I'll go through the big names, I suppose, and guys that have kind of took my interest, right? So you've obviously got Bojan Mirovski and Duke. Now, Duke had scored 18 goals for 43 matches last season, and he gets the plaudits. He's a big name, but Miovski actually scored 18 goals for 42 games last season, which I must admit, I knew Duke had a good season. I didn't know Miovski had such a good season in terms of goals, and that's why I was really surprised when I looked at your goal difference over the season. Do you know what I mean? Because that's some return for two forwards. Absolutely brilliant. But obviously you've kept a hold of both of them. You kind of intimated that as we sit now, there is no bids for them. So you would kind of hope to keep a hold of the two of them, aye?
I think it's critical that we keep a hold of the two of them at this moment in time, because there are entire, attacking threat, the two of them. As you touched on, that's 36 goals between them in the league last season. I think we only scored 56 in total. I can't remember off the top of my head. 58. So there's only like another 20 goals are coming from through the rest of the team, and that's not a lot. So yeah, they're huge players for us. In a weird way, the emergence of Duke is part of why we've now ended up in a position where we're playing with a back three as well, I think. Because initially Goodwin went 4-2-3-1. Duke was deemed to be last season a bit like a project player.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd see how he went, and he was really raw and really rough around the edges. And we'd see what happened. Then he came in and he scored a ridiculous goal at Ross County, the overhead kick. And then he scored another goal as well. He'd come off the bench and scored a few goals. It was the goal against Ross County, the overhead kick. You're like, this boy has to be starting games. Like, you can't keep this guy on the bench. And then we went to did we play a 4-4-2? Anyway, Goodwin started them at Easter Road, and we played with two up top. And from that point on, that was it. We went back with two because you couldn't keep Duke out of the team. Mm-hmm. But you also can't play him off the flank. He's too easily marked out of a game if you do that. You need to let him play through the middle. So we've ended up defaulting into the kind of 3-5-2 purely, I think, as a way to get these two boys on the pitch together. Very, very different players. But yeah, very exciting. It's not very often as an Aberdeen fan you can say that we've got two guys scoring, 18 goals apiece at the top end of the park. So yeah, I'm kind of surprised we've not seen any bids come in for them. We maybe got a little bit fortunate. Bojan Miovski won't thank me for saying it, but he got a really bad injury in the penultimate game of last season against St Mirren. He's only really just back fit now from that. So I think that might.
I feel you on that. I was the same as Carter Vickers getting that operation last year. We were all like, "Woo, St David's going to be coming for him."
So I think that's maybe helped us out with Mirovski, the fact that a lot of people weren't sure if he'd be fit or not. And then I'm amazed nobody's come for Duke. And there was rumours about Torino being interested in him. I think as well, though, Aberdeen are in quite a strong position. He's got 2 years left in his deal, so we don't need to sell him unless it's for silly money. And I think we've probably said to Duke, and we've probably said to Miovski as well, listen, you're guaranteed group stage football in Europe until Christmas, no matter what. Stay for at least another 6 months, play in those games, and if you do well in that competition, you put yourself into a completely different level of market that you can potentially move to. Then, and if somebody comes in January for you and offers us silly money, and it's to a top league or to a really, really good team, then we'll let you go. And then, as you say, everyone's a winner. We picked up Duke for, depends who you listen to. Duke's like either 400 grand or he came for free, depending on what story you listen to. And then there's a differing sell on to Benfica, depending on what way around he's come around. Kind of similar to what happened with Jota, I think. And Miovski we picked up for like 300 grand from MTK Budapest. So, And Miovski's got 3 more years on his deal left, you know, so somebody's gonna have to come in and pay a club record transfer fee to take either of these two boys off our hands right now. So I think in that sense we'll do all right out of both of them, I think, as long as they go on and have a similar sort of season this year. But I can't see why they wouldn't.
No, I can't see either. Right, so we spoke about the keeper, Roos. So when we spoke last time, I told you how much I was like Joe Lewis, to the point that I wouldn't have been upset if Celtic had made a move for Joe Lewis during his good spell.
Yeah.
With Aberdeen. I thought Joe Lewis really comfortable goalkeeper, but the mistakes kind of started coming a wee bit more consistently into his game, and Roos came in last year and you kind of didn't know much about him. Looking at him now, he looks like a pretty solid number one.
So Kyle Roos, when he came in, again, like Derby fans would have told you pretty much exactly what we got, to be fair. Really good shot stopper, but would never come off his line to take a cross ball. And we kind of saw a lot of that in the early stages of the season. For a guy who's as big as he is, he suddenly looked very small when a cross ball got flung out in the box. He got injured in that League Cup semi-final we spoke about earlier on. And it looked at that point he was going to be out for the rest of the season, because I believe at that stage, Joe Lewis was ready to retire at that point. And there had been a deal agreed that Joe would go on the premise we got a backup goalkeeper in the door, which we did. We took in Jay Horter from Ajax for the last part of the season. But then the injury to Roos meant we didn't have our backup keeper again, so Joe had to stay. Then Kel came back in again way sooner than was expected. And again, like most of the team, from the time he came back into the team till the end of the season, he was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, I would genuinely, and I'm not saying it as an Aberdeen fan, I would genuinely put his form towards the back end of the season that he was the best goalkeeper in the top flight last season. And I would have actually now made it a priority to try and sign Kel on an extended deal. He's only got a year. This is him into his final year now. I'd be liking to see us.
What age is he?
Kel must be, I don't know, he's probably mid to late 20s, I would have thought. Maybe mid 20s.
I don't know why I've asked you. I've got it in front of me.
He's got all the tools to be a really, really good
31.
goalkeeper. Was he 31? He's a bit older than I thought, but he's in his prime at that point. I would like to see us keep a hold of Kel. I think that should be a priority for us, to be honest. I genuinely think towards back end of the season he was probably the best goalkeeper in the league. There was a couple of saves he pulled off against Rangers at Pittodrie in the 2-0 win that were just out of this world, like proper top drawer stops. So yeah, I think even he starts the season obviously with a clean sheet on Saturday. He'll be hoping to keep on as far as that goes.
Right, so he's not featured this. We never featured in the game Saturday. Connor Barron, obviously he was linked with Celtic, the great young hope. Another one, Jack McKenzie, young boy that he's kind of come through the team. And finally, the guy I'd like you to tell me about is your Yank Dante Polvara, who I've never heard in my life until I did a wee bit of research. So there's the three guys that kind of, if you can touch on them.
So Connor's had a weird time at Aberdeen. He broke into the team obviously in the middle of the Stephen Glass era, and I think things were so bad that Connor came into the team and looked brilliant. Just
right.
I don't know if part of it was because things around him were so awful that he looked really bright. He'd had a really good loan spell at Kelty Hearts before that, and he'd done really well there. Came back, looked really good, really promising. Kind of proper, kind of Xavi Iniesta style kind of player. Just wants to get on the ball, pass it, spray it around a wee bit. You know, lots of energy. So he looked really good when he came in. Fast forward into that summer, the last summer when Goodwin was now here, the club had put an improved contract offer in front of Connor Barron, and he wasn't signing it. Then he ended up with a load of niggly injuries through the summer. Just never got going last year at all. Connor's agent's the same agent that Andy Considine's is, so I don't know if that's got something to do with it. But as far as the way the club have been trying to get Connor to sign up a new deal, and it's not happening. So he's out of contract at the end of the season. Now, whether that's because he's had his head turned, that potentially somebody like Celtic or something were interested in him, and he feels he can, better himself by looking at that sort of move without, moving under freedom of contract. I don't know. We'll need to wait and see. But he's kind of fallen by the wayside a little bit, and he's way down the pecking order now, as you've just touched on. Right. Jack McKenzie, it's a guy who's come through the youth system, kind of had a bit of a breakthrough season under Glass as well. Glass was very keen on playing him on left back and playing Calvin Ramsey at right back. It was two proper, youth academy graduates at full back. It didn't really work out that well for obvious reasons. It didn't work out very well with Stephen Glass. Calvin Ramsey had a ridiculous season and obviously got his big move to pull off the back of it. Jack seemed to suffer a lot more. I think a lot of teams targeted Jack as well, in particular, try to get like long balls over the top, like long diagonals over his side. I actually don't think Jack's, like my brother, who's one of the hosts on the show as well, my brother's got real bean his bonnet about Jack McKenzie, doesn't think he's good enough. Jack's probably played enough football now at top team level that we should be seeing real signs if he's good enough.
Yeah, right.
Okay. I naturally think he's actually probably a better left-sided centre half than a left wing back or a left back, which is where he played on Saturday against Livingston. But I don't know. Livy tried to pin Newbley up against him on Saturday, and McKenzie dealt with him pretty well in the hole. Newbley's a big physical boy, and Jack did fine against him. So I don't know. There's maybe still something in there. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. He's just one of those players that just, he doesn't do anything spectacular. There's nothing that jumps out at you about him, but he could be one of these guys that's maybe actually going to turn out to be quite a steady Eddie. And then Dante Povara. So Povara we picked up from the US in January 2021. He had just come out so he'd gone down. He'd been signed up at New York City, but he deferred moving there on pro terms to go and do his to go to college in the States.
Right. Okay.
So he went up down the college football route, did his studies, was named like the best player in the college system that season, then became available, moved to Aberdeen because it was always his dream to play in Europe. Fair play to him. Came here, didn't feature really much at all in the first 6 months he was here. Started against Celtic at Parkhead in the opening day of last season.
Did he? Oh, geez, there we go.
Yeah. And bless him, looked like a lost laddie. Like I can't even remember why he played. I'm trying to think who must have been injured. It might have even been Connor Barham who was injured, actually, now I think about it. Anyway. Oh, you know what it'll be? It was because Liam Scales. So we'd had to move. Yeah, so we had to move. I think McCrory played centre half alongside Anthony Stewart. So we had and Barham was injured, so we ended up playing Povara in the centre of the park. And bless him, the game just passed him by big time. And I think that dented his confidence quite a bit, to be fair. He's not played professional football really at all. He's come to the college system in the States. Big lad, fit. His technique looks very good. Whenever you see the video clips of him playing, it looks excellent. But then you see this all the time with players that come out of the English academy systems, where they've got the build, they can run all day, they appear to have the technique, but then you put them in a game situation and it's just they can't do it. And Aberdeen have seen way too many of those types of players come up on loan from down south. So it looked as though Povara was like really going to struggle here. He got sent out on loan back to the States to play for the Charleston Battery, who are USL Pro Championship team, so the league below the MLS.
Yeah.
Was there for 4 or 5 months. Appeared to do really, really well over there.
Okay.
Was starting every week, scored a few goals because we were told when he signed he was a box-to-box midfielder. It looked like Glass, and then Goodwin wanted to play him as a holding midfielder rather than like this kind of box-to-box dynamic kind of player. Like I say, got a few goals while he was back stateside. We've brought him back. He joined up with the team at the preseason camp in Portugal. Obviously, the US season was still in full flight, so he came back fully fit, ready to go. Barry Robson seems to really rate him, seems to really think there's something in there about him. Povara played really well at Charlton in a preseason game last week. So I think it's kind of make or break for Dante Polvara this season now. He's out of contract at the end of this year, I'm pretty sure. He's going to have to show if he's got enough about him now to really be a professional footballer in I nearly said a top league. In a highly competitive league, you know, and see where it goes from there. He's got all the attributes to potentially be a really, really good player, but whether he can put it all together, we'll have to wait and see. Yeah. It looks as though Robson fancies him. In a weird way, I spoke about it on our show not long ago. I think a coach like Barry Robson might be just what Dante Polvara needs. I mean, you guys will remember Barry Robson when he was at Celtic, right? Let's not try and pretend otherwise. Barry Robson was a dirty, niggly bastard, but he was a winner. And he would have kicked his granny to win a game of football. And I got the impression with Dante when he came over, he was too nice. Like, he was just this really nice Yank kid. Seemed a really top guy, lovely guy, but didn't have that kind of cutting edge to him. And I think, you know what, somebody like a Barry Robson might be just perfect for him, just to really try and put a bit of edge on him. So we'll wait and see. Like I say, he started the weekend. It's going to be a big season for him. He's got a cracking mullet, and yeah,
so it's a benefit.
I desperately want it to work out for him because I think it would be a brilliant. I think it would be a brilliant success story on two different levels. It would be a really good success story from an Aberdeen perspective as well, to have picked out a player from literally nowhere. Then it actually turns out he's a bit of a gem. So we'll wait and see. He's also got a great name. I mean, come on.
Oh, aye. That's it. He catches your eye straight away.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So. Right. Okay. So squad wise, that's the kind of guys. Is there anybody you think I'm missing for that squad? I mean, bear in mind we've touched on kind of guys like the two strikers and Rhys Williams, Leighton Clarkson, and stuff like that.
We haven't really talked about Leighton Clarkson, but the fact we were able to get him back on a permanent deal and sign him for 4 years is fucking mental. Like, I think we've been critical about our director of football in the past. The fact we were able to land Clarkson, he deserves all the credit in the world for that. That's
you not actually paid for him?
So I don't know for definite. I'm led to believe it's significantly less than Liverpool were being offered by other teams for Clarkson.
Right.
I think that we seem to have developed a very good relationship with Liverpool. I know that when we sold Calvin Ramsey to Liverpool were very impressed with the way that we handled ourselves with the Calvin deal. I think they were very impressed with the way that we dealt with Leighton Clarkson on loan last season. Liverpool, if Clarkson hadn't come back to us, Clarkson was going back to Liverpool a better player than when he arrived at Aberdeen.
Okay.
As a result of his spell here. He added so much to his game in the 12 months that he was at Aberdeen that I think Liverpool probably saw a lot of benefit out of that as well. So I think that, I think that's part of the reason why Rhys Williams has come to Aberdeen. I think we've developed that relationship with Liverpool now, that they can trust putting good, talented young players to Aberdeen and know they're going to get games, and there's a good chance they're going to get looked after, and that they're going to, all things being equal, deliver back a player who's better for having had a spell here than when they got here. So I think all these things help. I don't know whether or not there were some rumours that maybe we'd maybe done some jiggery pokery with some of the Calvin Ramsey sell-on things to allow us to pay maybe a little bit less up front for Leighton Clarkson than perhaps another team would have had to pay for him. But yeah, it looks like we've done a great bit of business on the Leighton Clarkson piece. And like I say, to get him signed up for 4 years, I think is testament to where the club's going, and to secure a kid like that who had options to go, various different places and probably get more money than they come to Aberdeen. But the fact he's decided, I want to go back to Aberdeen again, I think is testament to what's been built at the club, I think,
Yeah, that's the big one there when you were talking about it. It's all very good kind of having this relationship and this deal, but when boys are on the table and you've got a wee guy from Blackburn kind of getting offered to come up to Aberdeen, it's a bit far away, and for him to say aye, it's, as you say, that you can console yourself with that things maybe are going in the right direction.
I think it's one of these things that I've said a long time about Aberdeen. I think there is, I know that every football fan says this about their own club. Like I know it, but I genuinely think there is something quite special about Aberdeen Football Club in a weird way. I don't know what it is. There's an intangible there about the club, and when things are going well, and the city's, it's a one club city. No disrespect to any Cove Rangers fans that might be listening in. It's a one team city that when the club are doing well, when the team are doing well, the whole city just feels a rise. And yeah, there is something special about it. You talk to anyone who's talk to any player who's been here, and they'll say the same thing. So I think there's something about it, and maybe Clarkson looked at it and went, you know what, I suspect it's, well, we've probably sold it to him on the basis of, listen, sign a 4-year deal, come here for 12 months. If you have the same 12 months or slightly better than what you had last time around, if you perform on a European stage, somebody's going to come and buy you. And as long as it meets a certain threshold, we will let you go. And everyone's a winner at that point. That's the other thing as well. I think that's beneficial about the way that the club is now run. We can look at young players now who are coming through and looking for opportunities. We can now point to Calvin Ramsey, came through our youth system, got a move to Liverpool. Played in the Champions League against Napoli last season. Lewis Ferguson, we signed him for buttons from Hamilton Accies, tearing it up in Serie A now. Even Ilba Ramadani now with a move to Serie A. We can legitimately say to players, listen, the eyes of some of the biggest teams and some of the biggest leagues in the world are potentially on you by being at Aberdeen. You don't necessarily need to be at club A, B, C, or D. You could potentially look at clubs now, especially because so much recruitment now is done via data on the first part. If you come and perform and your numbers stack up, big teams will come and look at you. It doesn't matter where you're playing. But the fact we can show a pathway to say, this boy's come from here to here, and we sold him to, Bologna. Lewis Ferguson's been, this won't be popular for Celtic fans to hear, but, he's been linked with, moves to Juventus, he signed a new deal at Bologna, so that Bologna are protecting themselves if he gets sold on. Calvin Ramsey, okay, it's not quite worked out for him yet at Liverpool, and I'm not sure if it quite will at any point, because he's got, he needs to get past Alexander-Arnold.
It's a massive step for Ramsey, isn't it? But if Ramsey can get himself into, he's obviously, was it Preston he's waiting this summer, wasn't it? So he gets himself into Preston, he gets a good run at it, and then you never know, a top championship, a lower Premiership team takes him on.
Yeah. If Miovski has another season like he's had this season, he'll get a move to probably somewhere like Serie A or something, I'd imagine. It's the kind of league that would suit him really well.
Well, it's interesting, like you were talking about Ferguson there. Everything I'm hearing due to Bologna as kind of who they've signed recently with Hickey and stuff like that, is that they see Scottish football as totally undervalued. And we've been saying that for 100 years, haven't we? You know what I mean? So
it's the same as us. Like at the moment, we're looking at the Slovenian, Slovakia, and the Balkan leagues at the moment. Aberdeen, we're doing a lot of business there, and I think it's because we're looking at that going, we can get value in that league. It's the same with Serie A. They'll look at that and go, the numbers. If you're in that kind of middle to lower tranches of Serie A, we don't have the money of the big teams, but you're looking and go, well, look at his data. That really stacks up. And Lewis Ferguson's had a ridiculous season last season. Wild, played way more games than anybody would have expected him to play for Bologna straight out the gate. Integrated into it all really well. Has acclimatized well with the kind of changing culture and stuff, which as a nephew of Barry Ferguson and I wouldn't be expecting to happen. So he's done all the right things.
To go to Blackpool, Jesus.
Yeah, exactly. He's done all the right things. So it's good to see, and it's a real success story for Aberdeen. And I think, like I say, the more of those types of players we can bring through, and that allows us to sell that kind of project to Leighton Clarkson. Like Leighton Clarkson is an interesting player because he's small from a physical perspective. His stature is not massive. Technically, he could play English Premier League, no doubt. Does he have the physicality to play there? Not sure.
That's the one, isn't it?
But he could go and be a top player in Serie A, maybe the Dutch league, maybe the kind of Spanish league, for example. If these guys have got that level of ambition about them, then it's good that we can now say to these guys, well, listen, these teams in these countries are looking at players in Scotland, so come here, give it a crack, do well in Europe. We'll see what happens.
Definitely. Right, okay. So, due to Euro qualification, no league groups this season. No. So,
Thank God for that.
a few wee friendlies in England to start the season, plus a couple of local friendlies with Turf and Fraserburgh, ended in a 9-0 and a 2-0 win. Then you had a 2-0 away defeat to Preston North End, and then that 3-2 win over Charlton London, which set up the league opener on this Saturday past. Now, the draw for the League Cup was done, and Aberdeen have done away tie with Stirling Albion on the 18th of August. That must be giving you the fear. And as of this morning, the Europa League playoff draw was made, and the Dons will face either Zagreus, Vilnius, or BK Häcken of Sweden. As I see it, fantastically winnable ties, both of them, for Aberdeen.
Yeah,
right, so the 0-0 draw with Livingston. Now, as always, I am viewing this on the 4-minute highlights that the SPFL give us. I haven't watched the highlights and looked and heard the stats and a few Livy fans. Chances were thin in the ground for your team. You guys haven't had the greatest of times at Almond Vale recently, huh?
No, our record there it's not great in recent seasons. Because I jokingly tweeted out about it yesterday. I was like, well, we're actually net 1 point up on where we were in the corresponding fixture last year, so everybody should settle the fuck down. I mean, when the fixtures came out, the performance on Saturday was poor. We didn't play well. We didn't have one shot on target in the game. That's not great, obviously. I'm trying this season to be a lot more positive and a lot more kind of glass half full about stuff rather than my default setting. I must admit I found it quite hard on Saturday to do this. Because on the face of it, you go away to Livy, open the day of the season. That's a good opportunity to get 3 points on the board and really get the season up and running. I think, though, when you have to... Context is so important with these things. So, we turn up to the Tony Macaroni on Saturday with Rubezic making his debut. He only signed for the club on Monday. So he's had very little time to be around the squad and to be around the players. He's not played any games with them. He's thrown straight in, plays the centre of the back three. You've got Nicky Devlin playing on the right-hand side of the back three because injuries dictate we have to, and it's not somewhere he's really played with a lot of success in the past if you talk to any Livingston fan. You've then got Jack McKenzie on the left-hand side of the back three. I mean, if you'd have told me at the back end of last season, after we finished up at Parkhead, that the back three that would start the game on our opening game of the season next year would consist of a Serbian boy who'd not played for the team before and signed a matter of days beforehand, Nicky Devlin on the right and Jack McKenzie on the left, I'd have been spitting feathers, Like, but it's not through lack of recruitment. We've got guys in the door now, with the exception of Liam Scales. The injuries have just really snookered us. Then you've got Shaden Morris, who's a right winger by trade, is playing right wing back, so we don't have anybody else who we feel can play in that position. And you've got Johnny Hayes on the other flank as the other wing back. So it's a proper makeshift back five, right? Then you've got, Ramadani gets sold the day before. So you're going then with Shinnie, Polvara, Clarkson, Dukimiowski up top. So at the same time, you go, well, there's enough at the top end of the park that you should be doing better than this. But I think Barry tried to take a relatively pragmatic view around this game, and I think he thought it's going to be a battle. The surface at Livingston, and I'm not trying to make excuses about it, but the surface is fucking horrendous. Let's just not lose this game.
Right, okay.
And I think he was a bit worried about how makeshift the back five was. So every time we got the ball...
Maybe overcompensated in terms of a kind of structured defensive, and you just missed out on that creativity in the middle there.
Every time we got the ball, we just smashed it forward, and we're just hoping to try and catch Livy out over the top, and somebody would run in behind, and it didn't happen. And if you were at the game on Saturday, you would have been as well just like sitting back with a deck chair and just watching the sky. Because the ball, I mean, like, to put it into context, Dante Povara had the most passes on the park of anyone that played over 75 minutes, and it was 42.
Jeez.
Like, that tells you everything you need to know about how that game was played on Saturday. So the midfield just bypassed continually. So Clarkson never got on the ball. Miofsky's not a target man, so try to play that way doesn't work for him. And Duke never got in behind because the Livy backline are all giants, and
Well,
just headed everything away.
When I watched the highlights, now I think his name was DeLucas. I think it was. I've never seen this guy before. Obviously, I've not done my Livingston lowdown yet, and I watched the highlights and I was like, what height is that guy, man? The big boy with the white hair, the white blondish hair. Oh, he's a giant.
So we kind of played right into their hands by playing this way. At the same time, did I really ever feel overly threatened? Not massively. It was a game that had 0-0 written all over it from the time the game kicked off. And listen, to be honest with you, Armagh Vale's it's not an easy place to go. They make everything a battle, they make everything a scrap. Every time we tried to get the ball down and tried to play a bit of football, they just, Livingston just disrupted the game with, free kicks, niggly fouls, etc. We had John Beattie was the referee on Saturday, so that's everything you need to know about how that game went. I'm trying desperately not to be too down about it.
Yeah.
Which is kind of hard. No shots on target is not great in a game like that. A massive away support. There was like 4,500 Aberdeen fans.
Anyway, I was going to comment about that. There was the highlights I'm looking, just a massive red, and then there was a big Aberdeen supporter flag for Livingston there. I thought that was pretty good as well.
So, it's not ideal, but then I think a lot of teams will struggle at Livy this season anyway.
Yeah,
they make everything a battle. I'm pretty sure they only lost 5 games at home last season. 3 of them were against Celtic and Rangers. So, do teams pick up points at Livy? Not all the time. They don't. Yeah. The biggest challenge for us is just that our opening fixtures could have been kinder. It's probably fair to say, because we play obviously yourselves on Sunday, then we're away at St Mirren, and our record in Paisley is appalling in recent seasons. Then we're at home at Hibs, and then we're away at Hearts. So
that's a toughie, right enough.
You kind of wanted to get 3 points on the board and at least get you up and running, and that's not ideal, and it puts a little bit more pressure on the game on Sunday now.
You also flying out that everybody's been kind of down on Livingston, and whilst you shouldn't really get underestimating people, I think everybody. I mean, like I said to you, I listened to your podcast for last week when I think it was Jake you were talking to, the Livingston fan.
Yeah.
I mean, and he's come out and he predicted a 0-0. Do you know what I mean? So you've kind of known what you're up against.
Yeah, you know what you're going to get, Olivia. And like I say, our recent record in Livingston is absolutely appalling. So I'm desperate trying to find positives. We're a point up on where we've been the last 2 seasons in these games. So, if we finish this season a point better off on every game we play, then we'll be all right.
Correct, aye. The best thing about Livingston, remember, is the pies. I'll give them their due. Their pie selection is fantastic.
They're not bad. I see a lot of Aberdeen fans having a big go about Livingston. And don't get me wrong, the pitch is fucking terrible. They need to get shot of that. But I've actually got a lot of time for Livy. The boys we talk to a lot on the various different Livy podcasts. It's difficult to support a team located where they're located. Between Edinburgh and Glasgow, when you've got the attractions of the 2 Edinburgh teams and then the two big teams in Glasgow, it's difficult. And they do what they do, and people sit and go, "Oh, their football's anti-football and stuff." It's like they're entitled to play football the way they want to play football. It's not the way I want my team to play, but you've got to solve that problem. And we weren't good enough to solve that problem on Saturday, and I don't think a lot of teams will find it easy this season. So we'll see. We'll see. It's just it just puts a lot more pressure on the game on Sunday. That's for sure.
Right, before we get into this Sunday's match, you want to talk about the draw, the European draw?
Yeah, so I mean, it's based on the teams we could have drawn today. If I was given a choice, I would have picked the winner of the Mostar Breithablik game. I think that was the easiest draw that was available to anybody in the pot we were in. The draw we've landed with Zalgiris Vilnius or BK Häcken is the second best draw we could have got. So, listen, it's Europa League playoff round. No games are going to be easy there. I mean, people will look at that on the face of it and say that's a decent draw, but Vilnius are the Lithuanian champions. They only just got knocked out in qualifying round 2 of the Champions League by Galatasaray by the odd goal. They beat Molde last season in the group stages of the Conference League. They drew against Basel and they narrowly got beaten in Switzerland by Basel. So they're not mugs. And then Häcken, we played Häcken, Stephen Glass's, in the opening European game of Stephen Glass's tenure at Aberdeen, smashed them 5-1 at Pataudry, made them look awful. A 2-0 defeat away in Sweden, got through the tie 5-3. But at the time, Häcken were, I think, mid-table in the Swedish league. They went on to win the Swedish league last season. They're sitting second in the Swedish top flight just now. So it's not going to be easy. I think Häcken will probably come through that tie. I'm saying that now. I mean, they got beat by Klaksvik in the last round. But then, I think European football, and this is the thing, I've seen a lot of Aberdeen fans today being like, we should smash these two teams because this lot got beat by Klaksvik. And I'm like, yeah, but at the same time, Klaksvik stuck Ferencvaros out in qualifying round 1. Like, they're clearly not a bad side either.
Without wanting to be cheeky here, but I mean, Aberdeen's recent European results shouldn't dictate arrogance, should it really?
No, I mean, well, I don't know.
As you say, it's I mean, who was it that put you out last season in that fucking terrible pitch? Was it last season? That too?
Karabag, yeah.
Karabag, that's right.
Yeah.
I mean, I watched that game and you're sitting going, right, Aberdeen, do the job at home, and then you get a Karabag were bang on, weren't they?
I mean, to be fair, Karabag were the best team we've played in Europe in the last 10 years. They were excellent. I mean, the thing is, I will take exception with this one here, because Aberdeen have never lost in Europe against a team. We've never done worse than our seeding would allow us to do in recent seasons. So whenever we've been the seeded team, we've always progressed, and then whenever we've been the unseeded team, more often than not, we've gone out. But we've done all right, and I think we've done okay in Europe in recent seasons. I don't think we've embarrassed Scotland on the same level as some of our compatriots in recent seasons. But yeah, it's a huge opportunity for us now. I mean,
yeah, definitely. We were talking about today on a Celtic-minded chat, obviously, and we were talking about how that you're guaranteed group football, which is excellent, really good, and it's a good chance to get into Europa League. And a few of the boys were going, but the coefficient isn't exponentially brilliant by not being in the conference and being in Europa, and the money isn't massively big. Would you rather be in the conference with a chance of qualifying or balls out Europa League?
I don't know.
Because obviously you don't want your team to get beat. You know what I mean? So
this is the thing. It's like, so the money, there's only about 700,000 euros is the difference between the entry fee for either. So it's obviously you'd want the extra cash, obviously. But then the prospect is you maybe are more likely to win games or draw games in the Conference League, so you pick up more prize money that way. I don't think either of the competitions are easy this year. I think about the fact, everyone remember when the Conference League got mooted and then came in, everybody assumed it was going to be this tournament that maybe Scottish teams would excel in, and it would give teams like Aberdeen or maybe Hearts or something a chance to be group stage and then potentially, get into the last 32 or whatever. But you look at the teams that are you look at the teams right now who are projected to be in the group stages of the Conference League. It's fucking mental. Like, so do I want Europa League? I would rather win the Europa League playoff and get into Europa League. And if we were really jammy and we somehow got a group that was, had somebody a bit iffy in pot 3, because we would be the pot 4 team. And can you somehow finish third and then get dropped into the Conference League? Like, that would be the ideal scenario for us at that situation. But I look at some of the Conference League teams and I go, like, it could be just as bad, like, from our perspective about who you draw, or just as good, because it's all about experiences and you get the opportunity to play some big teams as well from that. But my natural default position is always going to be I want to win the playoff round. I want to go and test ourselves against the best teams.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, I always hope I don't come across patronising when I say stuff like that, because we've got the same dilemma. I mean, the Champions League is way above our bloody level, and ultimately, getting into the Champions League, taking as much money as you can and dropping into Europa League always benefited us. Do you know what I mean? Always did.
It's not a bad way to look at it. I mean, if I look at, I was just going to try and bring up some of the Conference League pots as they're currently projected at the moment, because I remember seeing one group, and it was just like that could be a, you know, if you ended up with that sort of group, you could end up with some of these absolutely ridiculous teams that you're going to be playing against. I mean, you're looking at there's a genuine scenario where Aberdeen could have a Conference League group that looked along the lines of Eintracht Frankfurt, Fiorentina, or Aston Villa, Bodo Glimt, who are obviously no mugs in pot 3, and then Aberdeen. You know, that could be a Conference League group right there.
Well, there's some good trips in that.
It's all right. It's not bad. You know, or you know, you've got Lille. Lille will be in pot 1. You know, Villa, Maccabi Tel Aviv, even Ludogorets in Bulgaria. And there's loads of good teams in that. So
yeah.
I'm not going to complain too loudly if we end up in the Conference League, but I'd like us to have a bash at the Europa League.
Good. I think you should as well. Well, I hope he's winning anyway. Right, so that brings us to this weekend. We're on the home straight here, right? The league matches between last season. So obviously the opening day 2-0 defeat Celtic Park, and then the 1-0 reverse at Pittodrie in December, but they were both under Jim Goodwin, of course. So more relevant is to speak on the final 2 matches. So you had the 4-0 win at Celtic Park for Celtic, and then obviously last day of the season we had the 5-0 trophy day defeat. So not the greatest battles last season. Obviously that 1-0, the closest game.
You say closest. I mean, Jesus Christ. I've never been as aghast at an Aberdeen performance as I have been in my life as that 1-0. Just fucking appalling. Like, I've never seen an Aberdeen team take to the field and just have no interest in winning the game.
It was mad, that game. Like, I was there that day, and it was so close to happening. It was so close to being 0-0, and obviously we've scored late in the day with Cal McGregor. But as you say, there was no interest in going for it that day, and that's wild, isn't it? But as you say, I don't know if it's my age. I kind of hold Aberdeen, third strongest team in Scotland, big club, should be doing this, should be doing that, and you kind of sit and watch and you go, and I'm pretty certain me and you spoke with Jim Goodwin, and I agreed with you that Jim Goodwin, he's done well to get the gig, and that day summed it up.
Yeah, it was a really. I still can't quite wrap my head around what he was thinking, to be honest, because it was that weird thing. It was the first game back after the World Cup break, right? So you have that. I remember talking about it in our podcast in the preview and thinking, well, you know what? If you're going to catch anybody cold, this is the game.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like opening day of the season, isn't it? You know, like we've had so long off. Have a bash at it, see what happens. Nothing is going to get the Aberdeen fans to turn against you as a manager quicker than setting your team out against either team from Glasgow to not even put a glove on them. And I know you're right, like it nearly worked, but I remember watching the game, and I remember turning to my brother, who is one of the hosts on the show, and I remember actually saying to him, and I don't think I've ever uttered this before in my life while I've been watching Aberdeen, I hope we don't get anything out of this game.
Jeez.
Because if that had finished 0-0, Goodwin would have seen that as being the blueprint for how to
progress.
Go
this is what we're doing. Aye.
You know, and then we played Rangers on the Wednesday night, And I remember thinking, if he gets a point here doing this, he's going to think to do this against Rangers on Wednesday. And like we were laughing about last night, we were recording on the show, and I was like, there's something very, very different about an Aberdeen Rangers game compared to an Aberdeen Celtic game, right? And there's just, if he tried to do the same against Rangers, he'd have been lynched, like at that point in front of the main stand, I think. And as it turned out, lo and behold, we went up against Rangers on that Wednesday night, and we went toe-to-toe with them, and guess what? We got 2-1 up, and okay, there was a massive collapse in the last few minutes, but
massive,
look what happens. As I remember we were talking about last night, I mean, Aberdeen's home record against Celtic in recent seasons is absolutely atrocious. We've not won at home against you guys since 2016. Wow. You know, and we've not even come close. In fact, actually, that's wrong. There's one time we came close in that period, which ironically, and we touched on it earlier on, was under Stephen Glass. Stephen Glass's performances for Aberdeen against Rangers and Celtic were generally speaking quite good. It was a 2-0. You guys went 2-0 up really quickly. We got back to 2-2.
2-2. Jota.
And then was it Jota or Abada scored the winner? I can't remember who it was, but we kind of had you guys on the ropes a little bit when it got to 2-2. And the crowd got up for it. Aberdeen fans at this moment in time will turn up to watch Aberdeen play Celtic at Pittodrie with a default setting, which is we're probably going to get fucking beat here, right? Or we're not even going to try. And it's the Derek McInnes thing. McInnes used to set us up so passively and so defensively against you guys towards the back end of his time here that we just sit and expect to get beaten. Whereas when we play against Rangers, the place is bouncing from the moment for the first whistle, and as long as the team look as though they're going to run through a brick wall and they're going to tackle anything that moves, they're going to head anything that moves, they're going to give a game of it, the fans will stay with it. But that the 1-0 game in December, you could have heard a pin drop around Pittodrie from the moment that game kicked off. There was no atmosphere. There was nothing about it. Compare and contrast that to the Rangers game that happened just in March, April time. Two completely different games of football. But if the team look as though they're going out and they're going to have a go at it, the fans will go with them, you know? And that's what we need to happen. And that happened in that Stephen Glass game I was referring to, when we got back to 2-2. There was a brief moment we had you guys in the ropes, and I thought we could have won that game, and then something happened.
I maybe need to go and look at this, but as I remember that season, we eked each of the games. I don't think it was. I think it was Aberdeen.
Both games we came back from being a goal down.
I remember them being tight as hell. It is kind of mental what you're saying about, and I understand it. I mean, I'm no daft. Celtic have got a great record up there, and the amount of 1-0s, the amount of late goals. I don't know, you guys seem to be the new Tannadice for us. Tannadice was just somewhere where we always just managed to get across the line, and we all love coming to Aberdeen, but every time we go to Aberdeen, no matter the previous results, we're going up going, this is a mega tough game. Like even this weekend, after the way we played at the weekend, everybody's going, that's a tough game going into this weekend. Do you know what I mean? And it's quite ironic that you guys are sitting there going, fuck, here comes Celtic. Do you know what I mean?
I think it's that thing. It's like, I look at it as well and I go, obviously you guys won at the weekend, but I don't think you were convincing. Nah. I think Ross County helped you first half. I thought you looked a little bit.
See, the mad thing that Malky said, that I think it's the first thing I've ever agreed with in my life, as he says, if Celtic are playing a European or an international team, they're 2-0 down, and I agree with that. I mean, the way we started that game, because they didn't have that back quality, whereas your two strikers have got that back quality. Do you know what I mean? It's a different kettle of Haddies. Defensively, we don't look ready yet. Joe Hart just looks like he doesn't know what to do. And I don't mean that in terms of he doesn't know how to be a goalkeeper. He doesn't know how to play to suit what Rodgers wants. Because, as you remember last season, every time he got the ball, boom, there was no thinking about it. It was away. That's gone. Yeah. That's gone. There's a lot more possession-based again. Yeah. And it's... But see, I'm looking at this. So that season I'm talking about, we beat you 2-1. Jota scored in the 84th minute.
That's right, yeah.
Then that 3-2 game, as you say, Jota scores, Ramirez and Ferguson scored. Aye, who's that? And let me think. And 2-1 at Parkhead. Ferguson scored, Jota. Aye, geez. So 3 games that season, all tight. And then, as you say, last season, it's...
Glass wasn't scared to go and have a go against you guys, or against Rangers for that matter. And it showed, you know, we were competitive. And then last season, like the home game in particular was just absolutely awful. And I'm very intrigued to see what happens as well with Celtic this season, because as you just touched on, it's a huge change in style between what Postecoglou had you guys doing versus what Rodgers' default setting is. Like, I'm hugely intrigued to see what happens with the likes of Greg Taylor with your fullbacks, because obviously Postecoglou like to play your fullbacks kind of inverted, and Rodgers has always historically played with overlapping fullbacks, and I don't really feel that Greg Taylor's game is as an overlapping fullback, but he seemed to thrive as a guy who could come in field, you know?
It was mad, right? Because, again, I spoke to you last season, and I went and listened to your preview of that game with the opening day, and I remember, I don't know if it was yourself, but one of you said, I mean, Greg Taylor's shite, right? And at that point, Greg Taylor, it was really looking like see, we done our season review. I said Greg Taylor was man player of the season. Greg Taylor was immense. But it's mad that everybody, Celtic fans, Aberdeen fans, Rangers fans, everybody's kind of going, but interesting to see what happens with Greg Taylor, because he's know that. I mean, see when he comes in and he overloads that midfield, he's really good. I mean, he's passing, his attitude. I don't know, now he looks like a guy who's kind of questioning himself, which is mad considering his confidence was busting the last couple of years.
I think it's going to be interesting, because I thought as well, I watched a wee bit of the game on Saturday. I didn't see all of it, obviously, but I saw bits and pieces. It looked to me so as well that Rodgers was kind of looking to try and play Kyogo maybe a little bit deeper and let him pick up space, and then, you know, draw defenders out to allow your centre midfielders to kind of run on past. Obviously, that's how the goal for O'Reilly comes around.
O'Reilly, yeah. And Turnbull should have scored for the same thing.
Yeah, and even like the resurgence of Turnbull is going to be interesting to watch as well, I think. I don't know, like, it's one of these weird ones. Like, Rodgers' record as Celtic manager against Aberdeen was like ridiculous. And so I have, on one hand, I have the fear, because I'm like, some of the games I remember us playing. I remember in particular in the run up to the 2017 Scottish Cup, you played us up here at Pittodrie, and I think you were 3-0 up after about fucking 12 minutes or something. Yeah. And it's like, that's just fucking brutal. But at the same time, I look at this season at the moment and I go, I think Celtic are going through this really weird period where your players, because you haven't had a massive turnover of players. No, you know,
I mean, as it sits now, Jota obviously famously left, and Aaron Moy retired or didn't retire, whatever, but he left the club anyway. But then you're at this stage where the manager is kind of giving everybody a chance and seeing what they're all about and seeing who's got what. And I think guys that probably would have got more time under Ange to build into the team won't get that. Do you know what I mean? And Rodgers, that's no. I mean, I obviously he ultimately failed with Leicester, but at one point he was destined for the stars with Leicester.
He still won an FA Cup with them, didn't he? You know, that's at the end of the day. Exactly. I just think it's interesting because you've got such a core group of players at Celtic who remain, who've spent the last 2 seasons being relentlessly drilled by Postecoglou to play a certain way. And then for a guy who comes in and he plays in, it's not an entirely different way, right? But it's different. Like it's manifestly a different style. How quickly can these players suddenly just, you know, go from
the Kyogo one is, I mean,
this is how I was.
Now I need the Kyogo one. I was at the game against Bilbao in midweek, and I'm sitting watching it, and when I sit up in the second tier at Celtic Park, so you can see Kyogo's runs constantly. He's constantly on the move, constantly running that back four, constantly offside, onside, constantly running, and that's gone. The runs are gone. Yeah. As you see, he's kind of looking, and I think with AB touches, he's proven that he's more than a goal scorer. But do you really want to take that goal scorer away. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. As you say, it's going to be mega interesting.
Yeah,
and just
I think
make
so.
sure that mob down the road keep fucking up. That would be all right. He's a better.
We'll wait and see. I think it's, again, it almost feels a bit like the game after the World Cup last season where I go, am I looking forward to a game against Celtic at Pittodrie? Not massively. Do I think this might be about as good a time as it is to play them because of the changes that there are there? Maybe.
Yeah.
Am I confident enough about how we're lining up at the back at the moment? Not really. So I kind of go, does Robson throw a
lovely segue there. Sorry to interrupt you. Lovely segue. Right. So tell me, only one game go on, obviously, in a few friendlies. So you set up in that 3-5-2 that we spoke about with Nicky Devlin playing the back three, which again is interesting for itself. You've got the new guy in at centre back. So how do you see the game lining up this Sunday? And what approach is he going to be if you're saying he's going to Livingston with a pragmatic style?
I don't know, because it's funny, we talked about this in our pod last night when we did the preview. So through pre-season, Barry's been talking really heavily about our intensity out of possession and the way that we'll press and the way we'll get after teams when we don't have the ball, and our shape and how we deal with certain situations. And we saw that at Charlton in the pre-season game. Like, we were 3-0 up at halftime, and we could have been 5 or 6 up at halftime because Charlton didn't know what hit them in the way that we pressed them so high up the park and forced them into mistakes and really kind of high turnovers and everything. That manifestly was never going to happen at Livingston anyway, because Livingston don't keep a hold of the ball at the back, right? It's not what they do. So that is just went out the window anyway, as a matter of course, because it's just not the way Livy play. So therefore, do I expect to see Aberdeen try to be quite aggressive and quite in your face when we're out of possession? I think we will be. I think that's Barry's default setting as well. So I expect that to be the case on Saturday, or on Sunday even. We need to make sure we get that right, because I remember when Stephen Glass in that first game, the 2-1 game we talked about, which is, you guys came to Pittodrie for that game. Poster Collingwood had a really rough start.
That was your first away win.
And that was it. That was the trigger point, and then I think you went unbeaten from that point to the rest of the season. Glass tried to do kind of something with the kind of very aggressive high press in that game, but it didn't work because we just weren't disciplined enough when we did it. Yeah. And there were guys jumping out of position all the time, and eventually you guys kind of picked your way past us, and that's how the rest of that game went. So I expect to see us be quite intense on Sunday. It'll be interesting to see what he decides to do defensively with the back three. Like I said earlier on, Angus MacDonald was meant to be touch and go for the game on Saturday against Livy, but had to miss out because, as like I said, his partner gave birth. He's not played a lot of pre-season football. Is this the game we decide to chuck him in and hope for the best? I'm not sure, but by doing so, you would allow Nicky Devlin to go to right wing back, which gives us a bit more balance there. We'll presumably still be playing with Jack McKenzie on the left-hand side of the back three. Rubezic will presumably be in the middle. James McGarry's not going to sign in enough time to play on Saturdays, or on Sunday even, so it'll be Johnny Hayes again. It'll be a very similar-looking starting 11, I think. He'll go with the back three. The only decision point will probably be Angus MacDonald or not, unless there are injuries during the course of the week. He maybe has a decision to make about whether he plays Dante Polvara again. I think he probably will. So, all about our approach. I think he needs to get the fans on side early doors. So I would expect to see us come out of the traps quite quickly and try and get the kind of fans on board. And then we just need to see how the game goes, I guess, from that moment. I think first goal is crucial, as it always is in these games. If we're able to get our noses in front, then I think the game changes at that point. Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. I mean, like I say, our record last season wasn't great. I think, our combined XG across the entire season against you guys, across 4 games, was like less than 1, I think. So, yeah, an improvement on that is not going to be difficult, it's fair to say.
All right, mate. Okay. I'm not going to push you for a prediction.
I'll give you a prediction. It'll be 2-0 Aberdeen, don't worry.
Right, okay. Mark it down. So, right, we'll finish off then, mate. Can you tell me your hopes for this season going ahead? Your hopes domestically, your hopes European-wise?
So I stuck my neck out in the line on the BBC Sport website by saying that we would finish second this season.
And I heard you say it last week as well.
I'm going to stick with it. I think we might finish second. Aspirations for the season.
Can I ask, is that due to confidence in yourself or lack of confidence in them?
I don't have any confidence in them. I just think it'd be fucking hilarious, to be honest with you. So, I'm also like, so the three of us on our podcast, our English team are Norwich City. So we found it pretty amusing when the likes of Todd Cantwell and co have come up here, and Kieran Dowell especially as well. So we'll wait and see what happens with those boys. For us, for Aberdeen this season, success would be, I think, realistically for the club, finishing third again, guaranteeing ourselves back into Europe would be huge, because I think there is still the opportunity for group stage football again, depending on the way that certain things break out. So for a team like Aberdeen, if you can consistently do this 2 seasons on the trot, that just the financial clout that would give us across, against Hearts and Hibs in particular, would hopefully allow us to kind of separate ourselves a little bit from those guys. I think the Thursday Sunday thing is going to be a problem for us in the early stages of the season, just because we can't afford to load up a squad of players after players. So I think League Cup will be a stretch, but Scottish Cup's coming back home this season. And we'll avenge Darvel. We'll draw Darvel again and we'll beat them.
Batter them, aye.
Yeah, absolutely fucking smash them. Fuck Darvel, mate. Honestly.
And then East Kilbride as well. Do them as well.
Yeah, that's fine. Because you'll do his whole William Wallace thing all over again, and we'll.
Oh, terrible, man.
Not that we're bitter about it at all, but
I feel you. I still hate up media Bratislava. Don't worry about it. Right. Okay. Thank you very much for taking your time. I mean, that's fucking for an hour and a half anyway, and that was brilliant. Really great rundown. Thoroughly enjoyed it, mate. Thank you very much for taking your time. Where can the people follow you on social media, and tell us a wee bit about your podcast?
Well, if you're a Celtic fan who enjoys hearing all about Aberdeen-related nonsense, then you can certainly head to @ABZ Podcast on Twitter, or X, I guess, as it's these days. And then, the pod's just it's an Aberdeen FC-related pod. So, again, I don't see why any Celtic fan will listen to it. But if you do want to...
It's good for... See, in fairness, it's good for the previews. It's good to hear that... It's good to hear what away fans think about us and stuff, and it's generally not complimentary, but
you'll find us in all your usual podcasting haunts if you search for ABZ Football Podcast. And if you like wrestling, there's lots of niche wrestling references in there as well, because we're all just fucking grown-up kids at the end of the day, so,
Well, Gary, thank you very much again, mate. And obviously after Sunday, good luck. Certainly good luck in your European games. I really hope you do it. And I'll speak to you soon, pal.
Cheers, Scott. Much appreciated. Cheers for having us.